Welcome to Bangalore International Center. Thank you all for taking the chance and braving the uh, uncertain weather. Today's session is Walking the Talk, Practical Philosophy, while we celebrate World Philosophy Day 2021. This session is in collaboration with New Acropolis. We often think of philosophy as something abstract, even distant. Could there be more to it? If we look at philosophical ideas across cultures and times through a different lens, they can become practical tools. Philosophy equips us to face the difficulties presented by the times we live in and shows us how to be truly alive. Today, as humanity battles the pandemic across and the world and its effect the world over, this way of looking at philosophy becomes more relevant. On the occasion of World Philosophy Day, we are here having a conversation with practicing philosophers of different walks of life to discover how we can possibly enrich our own lives by practicing philosophy. We have with us today entrepreneur, philosopher, and IT professional Bhanu Pratap Singh Slathia, pediatrician Dr. G. Shashidhara, architect, cultural thinker, philosopher Prem Chandavarkar, who is also VIC's resident philosopher, as we with pride like to say, founder, director of New Acropolis South India, Ran Kramer, and our moderator for this evening is educator Surekha Deepak. And I hand it over to Surekha to contextualize the evening and then take the conversation forward. Before that, please take a moment to switch your phones off or at least put them on silent. And do keep your masks on through the evening. And over to Surekha now.
Thank you, Lekha. This is good. It's actually a privilege to be here this evening and to meet all you wonderful philosophers who, like Lekha said, braved the rains and are here with us today. It's also a very special place for us to have the World Philosophy Day at BIC, simply because it is a place where you can enable conversations and learning, and this is something that we'd like to take forward today. We'd really like to start by thanking BIC for all their support. Of course, with Mr. Prem Chandavakar and also Ravi Chandra and Lekha and Raghu, who've helped enable this evening. It's been a great pleasure working with all of you to make this happen today, despite the rains. For those of you who do not know New Acropolis, I'll just take a very short moment to tell you about us, and then we'll start the discussion straight away. New Acropolis is an international volunteer-based nonprofit organization, and we have a presence in about 60 countries, and it's been around for more than 60 years now. Our activities focus on building human values and values that are timeless, and this to help contribute to both individual as well as collective growth. And this is basically the core of what we do. We've always tried to understand the forms of expression that come from different cultures across time and space, past and present, to discover their roots and their expression, whether it's in art and science or even through human projects and philosophy. And we give it expression through 3 pillars that we call, which is philosophy, culture, and volunteering. And this is how we work with it. At its core, we're a school of philosophy. In Bangalore, we've been around since 2009, and we have 2 centers, one in Indiranagar and one in Jayanagar. We also have a couple of centers in Mumbai and Pune. But, of course, for more, we're always around. You can speak to any of our volunteers. We're here, of course, to commemorate the World Philosophy Day 2021. And UNESCO has dedicated this day to philosophy. Actually, it's the third Thursday of November. And it calls philosophy as something integral to human development. It goes so far as to call philosophy a bastion against the narrowing of opinions. What we see today is a lot of that, where it's a way to, it also calls philosophy as a way to combat the simplistic rhetoric that seeks to divide cultures. And the World Philosophy Day is celebrated world over just to see how we can use philosophy for progress and unity against this whole idea of division. Having said that, I'd welcome you all once again, and we'll start off the evening. What we'll do is I'll just do and introduce you to the panel, and we'll start the discussion. But what's very important, since we're talking about practical philosophy, is for you to participate. So we do have time in the end where we're open to questions, and you're welcome to ask our panelists more about what ideas they've shared, or anything else that you think comes up during the evening. So I'll just do an intro a little bit more about the panelists. We have Mr. Prem Chandavakar, who's the managing partner at CNT Architects. It's an award-winning, widely published architectural practice in Bangalore. He's received his training at the School of Planning and Architecture in Delhi and the University of Oregon. He's a former executive director of Srishti School of Design and Technology, and an academic advisor and guest faculty at Indian and International Colleges of Architecture. In 2016, he was the Walton Critic at the School of Architecture and Planning at the Catholic University of America in Washington. The same year, he was also appointed as a member of the Board of Architecture, Culture and Spirituality Forum in the US. He's a member of the current executive committee of the Indian Institute of Architects, Karnataka chapter, and was the curator of the centenary year of National Convention of the Indian Institute of Architects on the theme Imagining the Indian City. Besides his design and practice, he writes lectures and blogs on architecture, urbanism, art, cultural studies, philosophy, politics, and education. So welcome to our panel. The next panelist I'd like to introduce is Dr. Shashi, who's a popular and successful pediatrician in the city. Dr. Shashi, of course, has completed his education, his MEBS, and after that a master's in pediatrics. He started his career as a consultant in Philomena's Hospital and later consults in several hospitals in the city. He's a visiting consultant at MS Ramaya Memorial Hospital in Bangalore. He comes with a very different school of thought, where he talks about spirituality as the key to happiness in our lives. And Dr. Shashidhara is also the founder of the Center for Scientific Spirituality in Bangalore. And as the pioneer of scientific spirituality, it's his vision to contribute towards the creation of scientifically enlightened individuals who can blossom in their uniqueness, he says. He's also the author of several books like The Present, The Ever-Present State, Living in the Present, De-Stress Through Truth, and Scientific and Spiritual Solutions for Managing Stress, for managing teens. He also has, he conducts free clinics every month in Dodpalapur. Welcome, Doctor. Our next panelist is Mr. Bhanuk Pratap Singh Salathia. He's an entrepreneur and an IT professional and a philosopher. He is the founder of an IT-based company in the city. And he leads a growing team of young professionals and enjoys mentoring young people and help them grow technically. But that's not the only type of growth that he aims at. So he believes that business is not just about making money, but that profits are a byproduct of quality and a value-based approach. He aspires to bring change in the business world by improving the lives of the employees who spend 80% of their time at work. This is done mainly by creating a work environment which is ethical. The policy extends to customers as well, where he believes in the quality and efficiency that he brings to them. He also believes that once this core is sorted, the rest will fall in place. Right? And final panelist is Mr. Ran Kramer. Ran Kramer is a philosopher first and foremost. He's the founder, director, and senior teacher at New Acropolis, South India. New Acropolis is a non-profit cultural organization, and he's been working very actively being a practical philosopher for more than 20 years now. And his main focus is in the field of education. And New Acropolis offers holistic education based on the classical style that sees philosophy as a love for wisdom and is something that needs to be lived every day, rather than the purely intellectual pursuit. Philosophy he brings through the scholastic programs at Acropolis. Brand's Kramer for philosophy is rooted in the belief that it has the ability to bring about profound, sustainable change, and by developing the best of human potential and enabling each individual to be an active, conscious part of society. In his professional life, Ran comes from extensive senior executive leadership roles in multiple global companies, and he's based in Bangalore, of course. I'm very grateful to have you all here and for taking the time to be here, and more importantly, for what you do and the value that you bring to all of us in society. So we'll get started, and of course, for being such inspiration. So we'll start the conversation and set it going. I'll start with this little story of what we assume philosophers are. So this is a story of an artist, a scientist, and a philosopher who go to a restaurant and order something. Each one has their own choice. So they're asked they're asked why they order that particular dish before they start eating. And the artist, of course, is in ecstasy, describes how beautiful the dish is, what the colors are, and what the textures are, and the experience of it. And then he eats. And then the scientist, of course, also talks about what makes the substance so good, how it's so good for your health, and so on. And he also eats his food. And when it comes to the philosopher, the story goes that I'm sure you can guess it, right? Starts thinking about it and walks away without eating. But this is exactly what the idea that we'd like to challenge today. To not imagine the philosopher as somebody who's sort of lost in this own world and, spends all his time mulling over something without actually being connected to life or to reality. And this is what our first question will be. Again, in ancient times, philosophy was often looked at as a way of life. And this is not something that we do very often now. How is this idea of philosophy relevant in these days, especially given the circumstances that we're living in? Mr. Premchandabakar, you say that everyone should be a philosopher. Would you like to take that one first?
Thank you. The two reasons why philosophy is relevant, a personal reason and a social reason. The personal reason is what I'll call the anesthesia of habit. Take some routine activity you do, like driving from home to your office. And you're familiar with the route, you're an experienced driver. You learn to do it on autopilot. So you can leave home, arrive safely at office, and all the while you're thinking of something else. And when you reach office, you have no memory of the journey. Now, perhaps you took this journey on a Monday morning, and over the weekend, there was a tree on the journey, and all the flowers on the tree bloomed, and it was a spectacular sight. But you didn't see it because you were lost in habit. So habit is an anesthetic, and philosophy is a way of keeping an alertness so you don't get anesthetized by habit. Now, the social reason is that if you want to form a healthy society that is not racked by division, where we're not fighting with each other about what our definitions of reality is, we need to philosophize. We need to learn how to decide what the issue is, what is the evidence related to what that issue is, and then fully understand it and share that understanding. So to illustrate this, let me give you an example that's very straightforward and quantifiable, just to explain the point. Now, there's a breast cancer screening program, and 10,000 women undergo mammograms. They are told the mammogram is a test that's 95% accurate. Its error rate is only 5%. A woman gets a positive result. She says the test is 95% accurate, so it's 95% certain I have cancer. That's the reality of it. Is that correct? Now, actually, the incidence of cancer is 1%. So 1% of 10,000 is 100 women who are likely to truly have cancer, out of whom 5% will fall in that error rate. They'll get a false negative. So there are these 95 women who are what are called the true positives. But the other 9,900 women, 5% of that, which is 495, will get a false positive result. So the odds of really having cancer is the number of true positives divided by the number of total positives, which is 95 divided by 95 plus 495, which is the 5% of 9,900. So that's 95 divided by 590, which is 16.1%. So if you get a positive result in the mammogram, 83.9% certain you do not have cancer, which is why any doctor will never take a mammogram test by itself and will read it in conjunction with a host of other clinical and laboratory data. Now, this is an example I've given you, which is very straightforward and quantifiable. Everything in life is not so easily quantifiable. But we face such issues like, to take a very topical one, a certain community says our future is in danger. Is that true? Can you look at the evidence? What percentage of the population is your community? We don't do these things, and therefore we start getting into conflict, and that conflict even turns violent. So we must have the capacity as a society to examine our lives, our shared fears, hopes, desires, dreams, assess the evidence related to them as to what is real and what is illusory, and through this chart a shared path forward that fulfills us all. In other words, we need to practice philosophy. So it's not just relevant, it is essential. Socrates is quoted by Plato as saying, "The unexamined life is not worth living." So we need to practice philosophy not as an activity of academic abstraction, but as a concrete tool for examining our lives. We need to be able to do it both individually and collectively. And if we do not, the cost to our society, to our democracy, to ourselves is likely to be very high.
Thank you. You talked about truth and connecting to the truth. Maybe that's something that Dr. Shashidhara can elaborate on, because how does philosophy help us connect to the truth?
I like to thank first of all for the organizing team. Thank you very much. Philosophy and connecting it to the truth. The essence of philosophy is truth. What is truth? The present is the truth. What we are all sitting here, we are discussing. But this we say peripheral truth. We are all in the peripheral truth. If I go deep inside, it's all made of atomic stuff. Inside atomic stuff, there is a quantum field. And that quantum field, today quantum physics clearly says the whole nature is a ooze of the quantum field. In our traditional ancient spiritual teaching, this we call it as Tattvamasi. Now, peripheral truth, whatever we are seeing, if we go deep inside, it's all made of a single essence, which we call it as centered truth. There is a truth, peripheral truth. If I go deep inside, it is central truth. For example, this podium or myself, if I go deep into my inside, it's all made of cells. If you go deep inside, it's nucleus. If you go still deeper, it's more of chromosomes, genes, and molecules and atoms. And inside the atom, 99.9999% empty like space. So this we call it as, in our traditional spiritual ancient teaching as Brahman. It's where the creation has happened. Though we look different, we're all out of atomic stuff. So that's why the peripheral truth, we call it as Jagat, and inside that atomic stuff which I'm telling, it's a Isha we call it as, because if you go deep inside the Sha, one who is sleeping, we call it a Sha actually, Isha. So, like for example, outside we have Jagat, peripheral truth. Inside we got Isha, Jagadisha. Outside we have Loka. Inside we call it as Sha, Lokesha. Or Purusha. Pura is outside. Inside is the Sha. Or Rupesha. Rupa is outside. Sha is inside. So only the truth is present. In the present, peripheral truth and inner truth. What we call it as centered truth. So we need to align, and every day, other than the present, anybody can live? No, not possible. Everybody is in the present. Maybe the mind dominates sometimes, and it goes back to either the past or to the imaginary future, but we are all in the present. Present is the truth. So, philosophy day, we need to, present is the only truth what we can appreciate, and it is peripheral truth and inner truth. The inner truth gives, going on talking about silence, it will not convey silence. So, in the similar way, the inner truth is, that's why I am Atma Brahma or Tattvamasi or Aham Brahmasmi, all, because it's all, in that Sha which I told you inside, the inner truth, it's Isha Vyasam Idam Sarvam, it's infinite. It's everywhere. So, we need to align this peripheral and inner truth to get something out of philosophy. Thank you.
Thank you. Ran, would you like to take it from here?
So first of all, it's quite an opportunity to celebrate together the World Philosophy Day here in Bangalore, and it is, of course, worth the effort, and also an opportunity to thank all those who made the effort to make it happen, from the BIC and from the Acropolis and our guests and everyone who came in this stormy day. And we are trying also to do justice to the World Philosophy Day, as it is an international event initiated many years ago by UNESCO. Probably while we are talking now, interacting, discussing, inspiring, it's happening in maybe a couple of good dozens of countries in the world. And that by itself is an opportunity, because the whole idea of World Philosophy Day is to connect, to integrate, to have a meaningful conversation, and to the way I see it is first of all to create bridges between between the external and the internal, like the doctor said, and making it practical by simply sharing one's own experience. Because I think there's, when it comes to words and speaking about something, what makes it practical is that it has to come with a real experience, life experience. So the best thing for me to start with is to connect it to the current moment of history, because I think we are finding ourselves as a civilization, as humanity, in a very special moment of the history. Everybody is aware that something is happening in the world, but we don't know exactly how this is going to end, and where is it going, where the world is going. So first of all, I think that since the world is facing a crisis, I think as a practical philosopher and as a teacher of almost 25 years, that a healthy response of a practical philosopher is to understand that a crisis is the biggest opportunity. We keep hearing that recently, that from world leaders in fields of economy and politics, let's make this crisis an opportunity. Let's make this not just 2 years time lost in pain and uncertainty, but let's see how crisis can become an opportunity. So when I say crisis, it's not just it's not just the COVID. The crisis is a climate crisis. There's energy crisis, and that is probably going to take a long time till the solution will come. But for us as philosophers from different fields of life, from science, from aesthetics, from architecture, from business, we feel that our role as practical philosophers is to bring solution. Maybe our solution is not going to, our solution is not going to be in the level of finance or solving the energy crisis or anything as such. But our solution is, as philosophers, is going to come in, the way I see it, is in a place which is going to help us to reconnect, to regenerate, to revive, to bring back the sense of meaning, the sense of direction, the sense of confidence, of coexistence. It will help us to, philosophy helps to connect the different pieces. When we are in a moment of crisis, we feel like things are disintegrating. So to bring things together, to help us to make sense again of a world that kind of lost sense of things. And above all, I think it's in a way what is usually most affected, and the way I feel it is the foundation of our life as human beings. Before finance, before economy, before solving the energy crisis, is how our relationships were affected, are affected in moments of crisis and such challenges. So one of the core pillars of philosophy speaks about human relationships. And when we fall back to the sources of philosophy and wisdom, we see that the meaning of the word philosophy is philo and sophia, which is the love of wisdom. So when we speak about love, we speak about connections. Here, there is an opportunity to understand that philosophy is a lot about discovering the ways, the practical ways, how to live together in coexistence, how to reconnect, how to heal human relationships, because human relationships are the most vulnerable, are the first ones which are suffering from moments of crisis and challenges. So here are the three things that we will be, we as a school of philosophy, of practical philosophy, working on the individual level, which is to kind of reestablish, reaffirm the understanding of the self, the understanding of our ability to harmonize ourselves and to make sense of our lives. In the social level, it is, as I said, to discover or rediscover harmonious relationship, and in the level of the macro or the level of the world, it is to understand again, to reconnect again to nature and the mysteries of nature, the beauty which is there at nature, regardless the circumstances and regardless whatever is happening in these moments. So these are the main things for me. And the last thing, which is when we ask ourselves, what is philosophy? The easier is to start with what philosophy is not. And what philosophy is not, I think it is not anything which is kind of on the surface of things. It is not materialistic. On the same time, it is also not atheistic. Philosophy is also not religious, but it has a very profound connection to what we may call the divine or the spiritual. We can say that philosophy is not political, but it is very social. It is very binding. It's bringing unity. So philosophy is not materialistic. Philosophy is, the origins is not a religion. Philosophy is not political. But on the same time, philosophy is very much metaphysical. It's very much concrete, practical. It is not saying that God does not exist or anything as such, and as well as it is not promoting, I believe, any political agenda as such in the terms of what is politics today, but it is definitely, philosophy is very socio-political. So let's continue.
Thank you, Ran. So Bhanu, you come from a world which is of business, and when Ran just spoke about creating this balance and the harmony between the internal and the world outside, how do you connect to this? How does philosophy matter to an entrepreneur?
Hi. So, firstly, it's so amazing to hear everybody here talking about the same truth in so many different ways from their experiences. And I think firstly, how we relate to philosophy today or a philosopher, it's somewhere you can say it's not the most respectful thing in a way. Why am I saying that? Is philosopher today we think about somebody as a deep thinker, not mainly as a doer. And if we look at portraits of all the great philosophers, they're all sitting in a very deep thinking position. You look at people here. So these are not the modern ideals that people want to follow in a way. These are not our heroes of today's world. Today's world, the heroes are entrepreneurs running big unicorn startups. They are celebrities, sports stars. Yet, philosophy is so relevant even today. And why is it relevant? In a way, if we look at the modern man and if we look at the modern human being, you can say a human being is a multi-component. It's living multiple things within itself. When I say that, what I mean is today the human being thinks in a certain way, probably goes to a college and studies altogether a different thing, comes out of the college and does altogether a different job, and probably goes back home and lives a private life. So you can say there are different components in a human being, but somewhere the alignment is missing, or there is also a conflict. What we are thinking, what am I saying, and what am I doing is not aligned. So in a way, we live a conflicting life, and that stops us from reaching our true potential. All of us have great potential, but because we're living such a varied life where the different components of us are not aligned. And this is also where philosophy plays a role. And philosophy is not just intellectual. It's not just about thinking, but philosophy is an active force. It's the force of transformation. And this is where the relevance of philosophy is even more in today's time. And we spoke about the idea of the outer and the inner. So the human realm is not just what we touch and feel. There is so much to life. It's not just the material world, the survival. Of course, the material is always heavy, and probably we spend 80% of time in the survival needs. But the true contentment, the true satisfaction cannot just come in when all our energy is going into something material, which we have no control over. We spoke about the pandemic and where we are, something we don't control. No matter how much we invest in our jobs and things like that, somebody could just fire us the next day. The company which are doing amazingly well today, and tomorrow they could shut shops. So the material world and excelling in the material world cannot be the definition, or cannot help us reach that true contentment. And this is where philosophy comes into picture. And many times we also associate philosophy with living a moral life, ethical life, following a certain moral code of conduct. And more, it might sometimes looks like, I have to do tuck, tuck, tuck. There are some commandments I need to follow, and that will help me be more content. But philosophy is more than just these commandments or these moral beliefs. So I spoke about that what I'm thinking, what I'm saying, and what I'm doing is not aligned. And these moral codes are talking about to be able to practice what I believe in. So I believe in certain ideals. I accept those ideals. What is stopping me from practicing it? What are the obstacles? And putting in an effort to be able to go past these obstacles. And this is what true philosophy is. And philosophy is as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago. We might think, we have such great technologies today and things like that. But if you look at the essence of human being, the human being hasn't changed much. We are the same, beyond the clothes and technology. The question that the human being has asked, or what is most essential to a human being, these questions have remained the same for centuries of years. Of course, the forms, the reflection of these forms are evolving and changing with time. And if we look at the life today, Ran mentioned about it, and everybody here, you look at as you're growing older, and even the world-wise, the life isn't getting easier. The material is getting heavier and heavier. You look at 20 years ago, one person would, be working in the family and the whole family would survive. Today, the survival is very, very difficult, and the life is not getting simpler. And these are just the outer aspects, but there are also internal aspects of life. Everything is not just the tangible part of it. And philosophy is talking about these obstacles. And it calls these obstacles not just as the obstacles which are outside, but also as the diseases, the disease of the soul. And it gives excellent remedies to these diseases to help us live a more fulfilled life, more content life. So it provides these amazing solutions to take the life inward. So the journey outward, of course, we've spent all our time, 80% of the time we're spending on the journey outward. Yet, the contentment, the harmony, the balance is still missing. And the philosophy is giving us another tool, the tool to go inwards and to be able to live a more fulfilled, more balanced life in a way.
Thank you. Thank you, Banu. I think this idea of finding the harmony and knowing whether you are saying, thinking, and aspiring towards the same thing, many a times we know what is the right thing to do. We believe we shouldn't be self-centered and to think that the world exists to fulfill all my needs. We know that. But when it comes down to the actual moment of the experience, we're sort of like Arjuna. You don't know what to do. You don't want, you're just frozen. What then is, how does philosophy actually help us make this transformation? Maybe I can start with Dr. Shashi, because you talked a lot about karma yoga and you believe in that. So if you could like to elaborate.
Thank you. So, present is the truth. In this, we are all in the peripheral present. We have 4 tools. One is our body is a tool for in our existence. Mind is a tool. Then we have emotions as a tool. Then whole ecosystem as a tool. You can enjoy so many things you can do out of ecosystem. Ecosystem means it may be individual ecosystem, it may be outside what we call it a social ecosystem where all the animals and friends, everybody comes into picture. Then it can be global commons like a river or mountain. It may be universal like galaxies, stars and all. So it's all peripherally we have 4 tools to use. Because centrally the self is always connected. That is the real present moment. The silence. But peripherally we are all connected. There is a creation, there is a creator inside. Creator is just center. Periphery is where we can use all the 4 tools. Out of these 4 tools, you can create, present is universal to everybody. You can create suffering, you can create joy, or you can create peace. So it is basically how we use the present is very, very important. So where the walking, the talk of philosophy comes into picture, where you will become, the self, peripheral self. In the peripheral self, we have all these tools. We need to learn to use this peripheral truth. Then only we can able to run the show in a way which you want. This is practical. It's present. It's a livable. It's very, very scientific also. Easy to follow. I think this is what I want to convey.
Thank you. Banu, would you like to add to that? Share anything? Would you like to add to that?
So, the idea of the philosophy, you can say the first step is starting from ourselves. Most of the ancient philosophies spoke about the idea of know thyself. So we start with ourselves. I said the human being has different components. So knowing these components, harmonizing them, balancing them in a way is this first step in the journey. And if you look at philosophy, philosophy is something which is thought-provoking. It's a active force. It's like a poking force, a force of transformation. It is not a passive force. It's a force which pushes you to bring this change. And the change starts with knowing thyself. So I understand myself better, and I understand the world around me better. And the idea here is also, I spoke about the ideals, what we believe in, especially when we go back to being a children, we had this imagination, we believed in magic, we believed in heroes. But as we grew, somewhere we became more docile, you can say, or somewhere the life became so heavy that we lost touch with these ideals. And the philosophy is trying to bridge this gap, where we are today and where we would like to be able to get closer to these ideals. And not just by thinking about it, but by making this active transformation to be able to bring these ideals closer to us. Of course, these ideals are perfect and they're always up there. How do I touch them? How do I become a medium to express these ideals in my life? And this is where philosophy is playing an important role. There are various schools of thoughts today, and I would like to talk about, I'll bring two concepts from Stoic philosophy. So in a way, you can say there are so many schools of thought which are trying to touch the same truth in very, very different ways. Stoics talk about that we do not control the life around us. We do not control the circumstances. But what we control is how we react to these circumstances. So what is in my hand is my reaction. But the circumstance necessarily is not something that I have control over. And this realization for them is the key to happiness. So realizing that what I control is my actions, my thoughts, but not something outside me. So this is the key for this road or this path of happiness. And they are talking about the idea of the pursuit of inner freedom through self-mastery. So the pursuit of inner freedom through self-mastery. And for them, happiness is something that is within all of us. It is not dependent on anything outside us. So our happiness, the Stoics are saying, our happiness is in our own hands. And if we look at our life, if we look around us, when we see somebody who's wealthy, when we see somebody who's honorable, by default we think they're probably more happy. They're living a more content life. But the Stoics are saying these are not the things that you should consider, while being, these are not things which are related to happiness. Happiness is something which is beyond the material. And in a way, they are saying we can disregard, contempt things which are outside us. So anything which is outside us is not something that we control, and it's not something that will make us happy. I can give very trivial example. Many times in our life, we always base things on when this will happen, I will do that. The simple example is we create a box of happiness, and we lock it. And when my partner will gift me flowers, I will open this box of happiness. When my boss will give me appraisal, I will open this box of happiness. And the key to that box is not in my hand. It's in my partner's hand, it's in my boss' hand. So we are basing our happiness on things that we do not control. And probably if I was the partner, the happiness would happen once in 3 months. So it's a choice. We want to be happy every day, or we want to give this key of happiness, the secret box that I have, the box of happiness, which is my happiness, which is in my hand. I want to give it to somebody else. And the Stoics are saying there is no need. You should just discard everything which is outside you. That is not true happiness. The true happiness is in your hand. You control it. And we have time? Just one more idea.
Just another minute, yes.
So the Stoics are also talking about the idea of freedom. And again, it's the outer freedom and the inner freedom. There are always paradoxes in philosophy. So for human being, and especially the modern man, the world we are living in, we always wanted to be free. Freedom has always, in a way, it has been an important subject of mankind. And what do we want to be free from? Free from any kind of restraint, you can say. Nothing to hold us. We are able to live our life, do anything that we want to do in a way. And if we look at the world around us, are we truly free? The reality is that we are sitting here, we're able to do everything because we are being governed by a law of the state and we are following that law. That's why we are free. And not just the law of the state, there are also laws of nature. There are seasons, there's rain, many things which are happening on the invisible level, but the laws which are governing this universe, the laws of nature, we are abiding by that. That's why also we are here. And not just that, these are the laws which are externally defined for us. But there are also the laws of action and reaction. There's a law which says every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So anything that I do, any choice I make, any action I do also has a reaction. So no matter what choice I make, the decision I make, I am not free from the consequences of the reaction of my action. So I have the right to take the action, but at the same time, I am not free. There is a consequence of that action. And the Stoics are talking about the idea of inner freedom. The inner freedom, which is free from anything external. What is restraining us is not just outside, but what is also holding us back is things within us. And it's talking about the freedom which comes not just from the things which are based on outside us, but also our thought process, our emotions, the different things that we go through, the anger, different elements that we go through. And the Stoics are talking about to be able to attain this freedom, which is coming from our intelligence, which is coming, in a way, human beings, we're always in battle. Everything we do, the decisions that we take, the relationships, there's always some battle within us. And the idea of this inner freedom is where in a way, the action is not based on our emotions, our feelings, something which is temporal, but something which is more everlasting. And the idea of this inner freedom. One small...
I think we will sort of pass it on. Thank you. I'm sure we'll continue and have this discussion with the Stoics with you. But I did want to go to Mr. Chandavakar, who, again, to hear you talk about transformation. Because when we're caught up, like Bhanu mentioned, in this world of our responses and reactions, is there a different way of looking at it?
Yeah. The first thing we must realize is that philosophy is purely not an activity of intellectual abstraction, purely resident in our brains. In her book, The Extended Mind, science writer Annie Murphy-Paul draws from a wide range of scientific research to point out that our thinking mind is not limited to our brain. We think beyond our brains. We think with our bodies. We have gut feelings, muscle memory, and the way we move our bodies and gestures is related to how we think. If my body chooses to dance on one hand or to bow down in submission or depression in the other, won't that affect what and how I think? We also think with our surroundings. For example, in repeated inhabitation of a space, we deposit our memories into it. So if you want to recall your childhood, even more than the family photo album, it is perhaps more powerful to examine the house in which you grew up. Because the photo album will reflect group memories and visible body gestures, but the house will also reflect solitude and what is not directly visible. And through that, it changes who you are and what you can become. We think with our relationships, in the resonances we find with friends, families, members of our community, even with strangers. We are able to assess who we are. As the philosopher Paul Ricoeur says, we know ourselves in the way we are called upon by others. Self and otherness are very intertwined. There is a minority tradition found in both religion and philosophy called mysticism. It says we don't need look too far to learn. Our own body is the first wonderful site of discovery. Mysticism revels in the fact that this bundle of blood, skin, bone, gut, cells, and so many other things bound by physical law, through a divine gift we are unable to explain, can dream, ideate, dance, wonder, love, think, empathize, and do so many other amazing things. Now, this is not the way most of us are schooled. We are taught to distrust this inherent creativity of the body and to place all our faith in externalities, a scientific theory, a predefined philosophy, a prescriptive text, a custom on the proper way to be. And because these predetermined externalities offer us the instant gratification of a ready-made comfort, we cling to them and we begin to, as the philosopher John O'Donohue put it, fear the wonder of our own presence. We must begin with that wonder, but we must learn to use it rigorously. And tradition offers us a mode for doing so, what we in India call sadhana or riyaz. Established in training in the performing arts like music or dance, but really applicable to all of life, sadhana is a daily, rigorous, repetitive, and ego-transcending practice, one where we surrender in order to immerse our inherent energy in what is around us, where we seek to unify the wonder within with the wonder without. We commune with the inherent creativity and potential of the divine gift of our own presence. We gaze with the alertness of wonder at our surroundings, drawing all we can from them to enrich and know ourselves. We revel in the resonances we feel with our fellow beings. Do all of this daily with rigor and dedication, and there is a new universe to be discovered every day. I'll conclude by offering these words from the dancer and choreographer Martha Graham, who said, "I believe that we learn by practice. Whether it means to learn to dance by practicing dancing or to learn to live by practicing living, the principles are the same. In each, it is the performance of a dedicated, precise set of acts, physical or intellectual, from which comes shape of achievement, the sense of one's being, the satisfaction of spirit. One becomes in some area an athlete of God. Practice means to perform over and over again in the face of all obstacles, some act of vision, of faith, of desire. Practice is a means of inviting the perfection desired."
Thank you. The idea of using sadhana to create a new reality and to bring in more life itself. Ran, would you like to talk about how meaning can actually transform life?
So, meaning in as a goal, which is for life. Meaning is something that gives us a reason to live individually and collectively. Meaning is of course something that is subtle. Days can pass and you forget what is the meaning of all this, what is the essence of our relationship, and you kind of very easily get into a kind of a doing or having or a transactional mode of life. But meaning is all about it's all about being. It is to become who you really are. Meaning and philosophy, that is the path to meaning, is not about doing. It's not about having. Everybody, we all speak about it in different ways to encourage this, to go deeper, to investigate beyond the daily doing and having. And one thing that I constantly resonated in me in our previous conversations when we met, all of us, to speak about how can we inspire, what can we bring, how can we make a difference, is all about how to bring the focus to what is less dependent on the circumstances, on the storm outside, or if it feels nice or doesn't feel nice, if I like it or don't like it. The doctors here said about silence, which is something which can very much resonate with what we are after. We can call it silence, we can call it peace, we can call it what is beyond. And if there's a storm outside, we have to remember that there is peace. There is the stoic serenity that Bhanu was talking about at the eye of the storm. There is something which is beyond happiness. We are talking about the search for happiness. But I must also warn us that there's something tricky when you think the meaning is the search for happiness, because we have seen how happiness can be easily traded with something which is very short-lived, something that becomes from searching for something which is lasting, something that can really bring us meaning to ourselves, to our relationship to the world, suddenly becomes a trap. Suddenly it becomes something which is cannot be trusted. So I would like to offer, instead of searching for happiness, let's search within for the eye of the storm. And I think that when there's a storm outside, it actually it connects to what I said about crisis, challenge, and then it's an opportunity. When there's storm outside, we will look for peace, but more urgently. When it's dark, if we will switch off the lights here, instinctively, we will look for light. So I think that's why I think that times of crisis are basically an opportunity, because then we are more instinctively, nobody will argue. Like 20, 25 years ago, if we would be talking about the need to make philosophy practical for all of us, to become philosophers, people might say, hey, there's no need. The future is so bright. There are no problems, right? Why do we have to speak about problems? But when there is a storm, when there is darkness, we will look for the light. We will look for a solution. On the same time, I must also say that being philosophers, but also all of us coming from our background, we all have roles in the society. We all have responsibilities towards many other people, employees, and family, and people around us, to remember that when we are working with people, we have to tread carefully. We have to be prudent. And I use the words of Socrates that said that he knows that he doesn't know. And when I say tread carefully, be prudent, and choose the path of humbleness way before thinking that we know so much about the world, we know so much about what is life and what is nature and what is happening, and we don't know much, to be honest. We are, like Bhanu said, very evolved technologically, and our science went way ahead to the moon and beyond, But at the end of the day, when we look at ourselves beyond the, the fancy technological packages, we are the same. We are still kids. And for each individual, I think, and especially for philosophers who are trying to help, who are trying to bring a little bit of, to make a little bit of sense from the world and try to connect the dots and help to reconstruct and recover, we have to tread carefully. We have to be cautious and responsible and say that this is an experiential path. The path, and doesn't matter if it's a Buddhist or it is a Greek or Western or Eastern or Acropolitan or whatever, it is experiential. If it was already proved, done, deal, you just do A, B, C, D, and in 2 weeks, you will have the ultimate liberation, freedom, happiness, money, whatever you want. It probably doesn't work like that. And I did want to speak also about when it comes to meaning and when it comes to transformation, because there is a need to change certain aspects of our lifestyle, certain perspectives. There's an effort to do. It's not that the change and the liberation and the peace will come without an effort. My focus, maybe in the next question when we'll have time about sharing a bit more experience, I would like to share a little bit experience later on, if time will allow, about transformation that can bring meaning in the domain of leadership. Because I think that there's a lot of responsibility for what's going on in all over the world. There's a lot of responsibility in the leadership, and I think that the biggest change needs to come in the level of inner leadership. We don't speak now just about our leader, their leaders, this leaders, that political leader, that religious leader, that financial leader. We speak about leadership as a tool to bring meaning and transformation, and I will share later maybe the model of leadership as a tool for transformation from the ancient world, which is the allegory of the cave from Plato, that speaks about the steps of bringing change individually, and then how do you bring that change back to society, to the community, to the people you work with, and what kind of resistance you should expect. And you should expect that if there's a meaningful change, there will be resistance. If it goes smooth and everybody likes you, something is wrong. And if everybody hates you, that's also not a good sign, but there will be a resistance. So we'll speak about it maybe later if time will allow.
Right. So I think we can start with you, Ran, when we're talking about how you live and how each of you is an example of, let's say, a living philosopher. What does it mean if you could just share from your experience how you are a practical philosopher, and that's maybe inspiration or like an idea for everyone to take and see how they can connect with you. Maybe you can elaborate on the idea of leadership.
Thank you. I'll try to make it shorter, but for me, it is natural. Been practicing philosophy, teaching philosophy, leading groups, teams, organizations, corporate, non-corporate, non-profit, leading organizations in this spirit for maybe more than 25 years. But what I feel is that at the end of the day, in order to be able to bring about a meaningful change, a real change, something that will be relevant to any human being who is interested, there is a need of a structured process. And since philosophy, like Plato once said, is both science and art, it means that it requires a process which is both, gives a lot of space for creativity, gives a lot of space for one's own rhythm, because we do not evolve, we do not perceive in the same way. And science means that there is a need for steps, for a well-established process, small steps, with the beauty in this is that in each and every step one is being guided by the teacher, in each and every step, if it is done diligently, if it is done properly, and not mechanically, there is a progress, there is a value, there is an evolution in each and every step. In the allegory of the cave, which speaks both about the individual as well as the social change, Plato speaks about, in book number 5 of Republic, he speaks about human beings who are trapped, who are chained in an underground cave. They see shadows on the walls of the cave, and they think that these shadows are the reality. The concept is known from East-West, the Maya, the illusion, the matrix, which is that fake happiness or our attachments, our aversions. The Buddhism describes way beyond our ability to learn and to perceive. The Buddha explains very, very clearly in the path what is the illusion and why are we so attached. And Plato explains that the individual process or the philosophical process is, with the help of the teacher, you can liberate yourself. You can release yourself from the chains, but that requires a shift of perception. There is a need to, because it's all in the mind, right? There's one reality, and endless minds who are perceiving this reality very differently, right? There's one reality. There's one real. But even the truth that we are saying there's a truth, he's saying there's truth, that is the truth, this is the truth, even the truth is a step towards the real, right? And therefore, with the help of philosophy, one learns how to, I would say, get closer to what is real and try to maybe learn from the errors and like Bhanu was talking about also and the others, is how to avoid, how to not repeat the same mistakes of that we've been doing, and that is the process to go out of the cave. And then comes the second part, which is the leadership that I'm talking about, or we can say the ethical leadership. The one that goes out was able to liberate himself, at least partially, and we're not talking about yet full liberation, from a sense of compassion, from a natural need to help others with the little bit that I've learned, with a little bit of experience that I have, coming back to the cave after seeing the light to some extent, at least, right? Coming back to the cave and speaking to each other about the opportunity and the possibility to be able to be a little bit more free from the chains. And this is in every organization, in every community, when a leader takes up this role of ethical leadership and the role of helping reduce the suffering, reduce the ignorance, reduce the misconception of what is happiness and where can we find happiness and we cannot find happiness. The first thing that leaders learn in organizations, also in the corporate world, is how to handle the resistance in a way that it will not be, because you cannot push the agenda of whatever change you were able to perceive. You cannot push that. You cannot force nobody to change. And there will be anyway a resistance. So how will you do that? How can we, hand in hand, while being able to help ourselves with the help of philosophy, and there's a lot of passion to help ourselves, but then when we are trying to help others, can we do it and not be too passionate in a way that we are going to be, creating the opposite effect? How to lead a real change in the community, in an organization, in a society, in a way that will be harmonious, in a way that will be accepted, at least by those who are interested. Those who are not interested, those who think that there's nothing to change, all is fine, and I know everything and I have nothing to learn further, that is basically those that we cannot help. Nobody in a family or in an organization or to a friend, to a colleague, you cannot help somebody who doesn't want to listen at the end of the day. So we are all talking about leadership in an organization or in a community with people that are basically on the same page. So this is just something about leadership and change.
Thank you, Ran. So, and Ran is somebody who's practicing leadership, like we also saw in the intro. Maybe I will hand it over to Mr. Prem Chandrabhakar.
There is a slim, very readable book which if you haven't read, you must read. It's called Letters to a Young Poet and is a collection of 10 letters written by the German poet Rainer Maria Rilke, offering advice to a young and aspiring poet. And one of the letters is a response to a question posed by the poet, which is, how do I write poetry? And Rilke responds saying, you're asking the wrong question. The correct question is, must I write? And if you spontaneously and open-heartedly answer, I must, then the how will resolve itself. So the question is not, how do I philosophize? It should be, must I philosophize? And be aware that a failure to answer positively is to condemn yourself to a life of habit, a life shorn of potential, a life where control is handed over to others, a life probably characterized by discord with others, and a fear of the strange and unfamiliar. So accept that you must philosophize and the how will resolve itself. Having said that, let me offer 3 tips and tricks. Number 1. Some years ago, I was teaching at Srishti, a design school, and one of my students from those days is here today. And in a course I was teaching the final year students, I pushed them into taking an explicit philosophical position on who they were, what their work meant, and what value it offered. And I typically get a pushback from the students saying, I accept the need for what you're asking, but I'm young, I'm not ready as yet. Don't ask me to do it today, I'll do it sometime in the future. And in response, I'd ask them this question. When you were a teenager, did you have an argument with your parents saying, don't tell me what to do, I'm old enough to decide? And almost all of them raised their hands and admitted to having had such an argument. And I said, see, you took a position on very complex issues like personal identity and family sociology. These are issues that people with PhDs spend a lifetime researching. Now, you may look back at that teenage argument and find that position you took as naive and foolish. But in taking that position, you learned and grew as a person. So it's not a matter of knowing enough, it's a matter of stretching what you know today. So, and in that stretching, there's no qualifying standard of how much more. Just know a little more tomorrow than you know today. Do it every day with dedication and rigor. Don't discard what you learned today. Keep a notebook, a diary, or a scrapbook so it can build into subsequent days of learning. And you do this every day, and it's amazing how much you're able to accumulate and grow over time. Number 2, and I'm beginning to take issue with the Stoics here. Be fully aware of your extended mind, how your surroundings are inextricably implicated in your discovery. The environmental writer Michael McCarthy draws an interesting difference between happiness and joy. Happiness can be internally focused, can be self-absorbed, and therefore dissipates very quickly. You may be happy right now because you're getting the chance to eat a well-made pizza. But eventually the pizza gets eaten, hunger returns, and you're back to where you started. Joy has an outward gaze. It finds resonance in another person, a beautiful place, a wider purpose. It constantly drops anchors in something that is greater than yourself. And an ongoing alertness to such anchors is both sustaining and renewing. Always philosophize with joy. And number 3, don't fall into the trap that you must first work out a philosophy and then live it. Trust the wonder of your own presence, its inherent wisdom, to realize that so much that makes life worthwhile, love, joy, wonder, beauty, so much more, are all qualities you would be hard-pressed to define in words, but you know them as unquestionable, tangible reality when you experience them. Use that to validate what you encounter. But remember, a totally internal validation can descend into narcissism. So use what you encounter, what you philosophize, to challenge and critique what you know internally. We do not intuitively live by first reflecting and then acting. We live by a reflection within action. And that is in a mode that is conversational. For example, we don't sustain friendships by defining a charter or philosophy of friendship. If you try that, you'd probably lose all your friends. We sustain friendship by conversation where one side speaks and then pauses to listen with attention and affection to what the other speaks and is affected by that listening before speaking again. So philosophy is really a conversational activity that never ends. A dialogue between the inherent and spontaneous wisdom of one's presence, the ability to reflect and extend that wisdom through philosophy, and to revel in the wonder of what is around you. It's a conversation where inner presence, reflective examination, and outer wonder continuously critique each other. So I think the topic of this evening's discussion is perhaps incomplete because it's not just about walking the talk. True philosophy is an energetic, rigorous, confrontational, joyful, and continuous conversation between walking the talk and talking the walk.
Thank you. Yeah. That was a lot. So it's joy, it's the practice, it's the memory, it's the connection. It's all of it put together. Thank you for summarizing that so well. Dr. Shashi, would you?
Yeah. Living in the present is walking the talk, because present means peripheral truth, peripheral, what is outer present we say, where we have a doership. As a doctor, I see my patients. That is what we call it as karma. And the inner present or the center truth, which is beingship. So there is a combination we have to align. There is a doership in the outer present. There is a beingship in inner present. So when I am dynamic at the outer present, when I'm doing some karma of mine, or anybody, any profession, but still centered in the, when I see a patient, I see, we ask name, what is the problem, and all those things. These are all the doership, where I treat. But I know very well, even my inner center and the babies or the patient's inner center is in the same, where it is one. So that is what we call it as beingship. Very, very important thing, we call that as a karma yagna, where you do all your work and ultimately put into the center where you burn whatever you have done. So we call that as a karma yagna. Like that, everybody can practice, this as an individual in the periphery. We are all unique. We are all uniquely designed in the creation. We have a unique capacity. Nobody is less, nobody is more. With that, we can create a meaning to life. This body, paropakarartam idam shariram, yes, so many of them are doing volunteering services, such a good human activity. You need to be doership, dynamic at the peripheral truth, but being in the central truth. So we need to align both. When we align, we can live in the present. When we have a conflict in the peripheral truth, then aligning is going to be difficult. So we need to have a harmony in the body, mind, and emotions. We can create happiness. We need to, happiness is something which we can create out of body, mind, emotions. And ecosystem, where if you go to some other place where beautiful river, beautiful sunset, all those ecosystem gives, and social connection. But being, which is beyond happiness, is just a peace. So we need to align both. When we have a gift of outer, present is the gift. That name itself indicates. When we have a doership and beingship, we should align and do our, we can create a meaning to life. As such, there is no meaning. We can create a meaning to life. This is what I like to convey. Living in the present itself is a very important, practical walking the talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I spoke about the idea of know thyself, and the process, the starting process. And the idea is that philosophy and know thyself brings in a lot of objectivity. It also brings in discernment. The world we are living in, it's a maze of choices, and we like choices today. And being able to discern, and there are decisions that we have to make every moment. The philosophy brings in clarity. Where is my decision coming from? Is it coming from my emotions, which are temporal? I could be happy, I could be sad, there's anger coming in. Or is it coming from other aspects of the human realm? So philosophy brings in the ability to discern, and also to be able to objectively think. So again, in the realm of decision, the objectivity can be used in our day-to-day lives. And we can say the philosophy for me and in general, it starts with the idea of self-discovery, but it doesn't end there. We are living in a world which we share with other people, whether it's our workplaces, whether it's outside. If I am content and I build a nice house, I protect myself, I put all the barbed wire, I put all the cameras, but the world outside is it's in a chaos. So I cannot still be happy or content. So the process starts with you, but it doesn't end with you. So there is also a role that a society plays, the people around you plays. The world that I come from, my work life, we don't work with machines, we work with people. So how do you build this art of human relationship? Ran spoke about that philosophy is science and art. So how do we bring people together? And of course, at your workplaces, money plays an important role, but it's not just the money that keeps people together. There are a lot more aspects of a human relationship that keep the people together. So the art of being together, the art of keeping the flock together, and not just for some material goal, but also be able to build this better world, more sustainable world. All these are very big words to be able to create a better, more sustaining society. So the philosophy has to go back to the world. It starts with you, and how do I make a difference in the world? And there is one saying in Hindi. It's actually going back to the individual again, but it says, "Jo man jeete wo jag jeet." So the one who wins over his mind wins over the world. So it starts with there, and everything starts from within. And the true source of our happiness is something which is within all of us. And philosophy is this mean to be able to bring the best out of ourselves, to be able to give us these tools, to be able to go on this inner war. And it's like this expedition which we are ready to go on. There is a quote which I would like to read from Winnie the Pooh. It says, "As soon as I saw you, I knew adventure was going to happen. As soon as I saw you, I knew adventure was going to happen." And that is the idea of philosophy. It's like Ran mentioned, it's an experiential path. So it's not the path which is fully defined, but it's an experiential path. So it's like we have to be, in a way, ready for this adventure, this expedition. And that is the idea of being a philosopher, that you're ready with your tools, and you are ready to begin this adventure of life. And if you look at life around us, life is not static. There's ups and downs. And we do not control these circumstances. But we can be more prepared. We can have the right tools to live a more fulfilled life at an individual level, and also at the collective level of the society, and be this important link in this chain, in this society, to build a more better, harmonious, sustainable world.
Thank you. That's a lot of ideas to chew on, but I know we're a little stretched with time, but if there are any questions, I think it's really important that we address those.
I think we have enough time for two. We actually run out of time while contemplating it, but we
Yeah.
have time for two questions.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening.
Yes.
Yeah, I heard a lot, the subject being philosophy, haven't gathered much. But anyway, that's not a criticism of the panel, but maybe my limitations and the nature of the subject itself. So what I have understood from your talk is that philosophy could be a connect between our mind, intellect, and body, and help us to take control of little bit more of our lives or ourselves. And it is a little bit of a spirit of the creator in us. All that is fine. My questions are just limited on two lighter things. Irrespective of the subject which we study or somebody research on, why everybody gets a Doctor of Philosophy as the final degree? Is philosophy so universal that everything has to be finally PhD only? And second, all philosophers and the panel here looked so serious. And is there a place for humor in philosophy? Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Is there somebody particular you'd like to address this question to?
I didn't find any difference.
That was a funny question.
I don't think any philosophers that we have, at least here, don't have a sense of humor. I think Bhanu was just sharing about a stand-up comedian that he had in his office this evening. But anyone would like to address this?
Yeah, I'd like to cite an essay by the Italian writer Italo Calvino. And his essay is on the theme of, it's a collection of in a collection called Six Memos for the Next Millennium. And the first essay is on the theme of lightness. And what he says is if we just look at the world very directly and rationally, we get weighed down by information till we are totally bound by heaviness. And the way to tackle with it is to look at the world indirectly. And one of the ways he says is what the poet uses is to use metaphor. But another way is to use humor. And through that, you're actually able to see the world with much greater clarity because the weight of information otherwise pins you down so that you can't even move, you can't even see. So definitely there's a role for humor, there's a role for metaphor, and I would say it's crucial that I use the phrase philosophize with joy. So you have to have a certain lightness. And I gave the example of the teenager arguing with parents who's actually philosophizing in the process. So definitely it's not something that requires a PhD.
I think also just thank you, but I think that was the whole point of what we were trying to say is that it's not about getting a PhD, that it's actually ideas that you can use every day. Right, so that's, we have one more question. I think time for one more.
Hi. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yes. My question is, I'm of the belief, and I believe a lot of people here share that we need more exposure and learning in philosophy like we do with science in schools as well as with adults. And with science, fortunately, there are lots of compulsory education in school. We have lots of wonderful science communicators like Carl Sagan. But if you were to do something like that with philosophy, what would you say, my question is specifically to Ren, what would you say are the most important branches of philosophy to focus on? Or what are the most important skills that people should have, you think? Like if you had limited time and resources, where would you focus all of that on?
I think that the answer was given, I think, in quite details in Bhanu's words about to start with giving the individuals from early age the tools to know themselves, to know what life is, to know what love is, to know what death is, to know the importance of truth, the importance of, and I think that this is the first step that in philosophy it is called, in Latin it's called epistemology, which is the pillar of philosophy which speaks about the studies of the consciousness. I think that our ability to understand what is consciousness, which is one of the pillars of philosophy. Another one is aesthetics, which is also very important. Another one is metaphysics. But I think the best metaphysics maybe can come later, but to study and to practice how our consciousness works. How can I basically elevate my consciousness? How can I know at every given moment where my consciousness is? And how can I improve my sensibility, not sensitivity, sensibility, my ability to be sensitive to others, to beauty, so I think the first thing comes with bringing into the education process, let it be in schools or now it's too late, I think, to think about education for kids, for most of us, but it's on the other hand, it's never late. We can always catch up with understanding, experiencing about our consciousness, and this will bring us to the gates of wisdom. It's not, philosophy is not wisdom, like Socrates said. Socrates said philosophy is the love of wisdom. It is the path, it is the process. It can bring us to the gates of wisdom, of the mysteries, of mysticism, to metaphysics, where we can find the shunyata, the bliss, the sukha, where we can find that silence at the eye of the storm that is beyond consciousness, beyond happiness. And this is something that we share also. This is something that unites us, but step by step. First of all, I would definitely introduce the know thyself and the sciences of epistemology and learning about the human consciousness. Does it answer? Right.
Thank you. We'll do one last question.
One last question.
Hi, good evening. Firstly, I'd like to thank all of you for your time. I have a two-part question. I think my first one is more of a comment than a question. I'd like to issue a caveat here and say that I'm not really a philosopher. I'm quite a novice, so please take it with a pinch of salt. The first comment is pointedly to Mr. Bhanu, who brought up the popular aphorism of know thyself, right? From what I'm aware, know thyself was more of knowing the workings of the world, right? Socrates believed that, for example, you'd know what an atom is even when you were born. So he comes from a set of philosophers that, let's say, there were a set of philosophers who were a priori and a set of philosophers who were a posteriori, who believed that, we all have knowledge within us already without the experience. So I like his comment on that because he mentioned know thyself more in its adapted meaning today, which is to know yourself rather than the workings of the world. And my second question is mostly generally to all four of you on whether you believe in free will or whether you believe it's an illusion, and whether you consider that in your lives. And I'm forgetting the other part of my question. So yeah, free will. So on a scale of maybe fatalism to compatibilism, where all of you guys lie on the free will illusion debate. Thank you.
So the idea of education, today we consider idea of education is to impart something, to take on something from the world. But the whole idea of education was to bring out something which is already within you. So it is like the onion. There are layers of the onion on it. You're peeling the layers and bringing out something which always existed within us. So the tools are not just that you will add on something, I will know mathematics, science, and things like that. The tools are here to help us touch something which is within us. So when I say know thyself, I'm talking about these tools which will help us go within us and bring out this potential. So all of us have a potential, and the potential for everybody is different. So how do we help each one realize their potential or fulfill their potential? So by helping them going within. The analogy of onion is what I would refer to.
Yes, please.
To address your question of free will and also the question of where do I learn philosophy from, you don't always learn it in a school or in a heavy book or something. You can learn it from all unexpected sources, sometimes even from dreams. And I'm going to share with you a dream I had. I rarely have lucid dreams, but this was one of those rare lucid dreams. And in that dream, I was a filmmaker giving a lecture to students by showing an animated film I had made. And I was talking about free will versus predestination. And it was actually a sequence of 3 animations, and each animation defined a space. And within that, there were these human figures. And everything was in grayscale, but when there was a movement, that moving figure became colorful. And in the first sequence, if a figure on one side moved, the figure on the other side seemed compelled to make a symmetrical movement, and it was all jerky and machine-like. And I said, this is predestination. You can't control yourself. Everything is controlled by what someone on the other side is doing. In the second animation, that link starts breaking, and the figures start doing whatever they want. But then they begin colliding with each other, and the colors become very jarring. And I said, this is pure free will. Everyone's doing what they like. In the third animation, they begin to look at each other and they begin to dance, and they respond to each other. And the colors become harmonious. And I said, it's not free will or predestination. It's how much beauty you can see in the world. This is where the question of aesthetics comes in, perhaps. But you have to remember that you are within a world, you're immersed in a world that pre-exists you, and that immersion comes by the very fact of your birth. And perhaps the goal of your philosophy is not to step away from the world and understand it, but immerse yourself in it and find harmony with it.
That will be it for this evening. It's been a very wonderful journey into meaning, into joy, into harmony, into so many different aspects, that into leadership, into what sukha is, and what the inner silence is, how we can connect to it. I thank all of you for really your time here, and I'd really like to thank all of you for braving the weather and the rains to be here and enjoy this evening with us. Thank you very much.